Welcome to a to the channel We Are Humanity. This is episode number 5. This channel is concerned chiefly with promoting human unity and advancing social harmony. This channel's aim is to challenge the entrenched thinking of us versus them, which has plagued this country since its inception. And so this channel is all about humanity, human unity. In the previous episode, we looked at the social belief that I think is at the center of the division and tension and angst that plagues our country. And that belief was the false notion of race. And I asserted in the previous episode that the race nonsense is really a collection of ideals that have been lodged in the collective unconsciousness. And so I want to for purposes of discussion, I want to refer to those ideals as the SOS, or social oppression system. And this is the dark cloud that hovers over our society that nurtures our minds into believing that the us versus them paradigm is in fact valid. And so we want to call those ideals the SOS system. So what is the SOS exactly? It it is the mysterious network of ideals that exists within our unconscious mind. And I say mysterious because no one is an expert in terms of how the mind or the brain perfectly functions. But we can learn about it kind of based on the examination of the social landscape. We can see the destruction and chaos that occurs throughout our society, and that can be traceable back to activities often that take place that originate from within the mind. And so it's a network of ideals that have historically effectively tried to convince us that we are not the same human family, that the us versus them thinking has validity. Now, the efficiency of this network varies from person to person. In some persons, its effects are mild. And again, it depends on how frequently and the volume of information that you're exposed to socially. So if a person is has limited exposure to the information that swirls around us constantly, then the feeding of that person's unconscious will be much more limited. And so those persons will tend to see that we are human. They accept that, but they also notice that there's something strange about the labeling. It doesn't feel natural. Unfortunately, a lot of these persons they keep this unnatural feeling to themselves and they don't try to investigate or try and question it. And that's primarily what this channel is trying to promote. Is trying to get people to react to the uncomfortableness they feel when they have to apply labels to other human beings. Now, at the other extreme, there are persons that are whose lives are so dominated by this conditioning that they think that unless you look like them, you are somehow fundamentally flawed. You know, like the notions of white power or black power. Those things are saying that if you don't look like us, then you are somehow less human. And it's really sad. So the SOS influence can vary from being very mild to all encompassing. And so this network, it shapes our thinking, our beliefs, and depending on whether one is mildly influenced or engulfed by it, that will influence the intensity of our actions regarding social beliefs. And the most important thing is this network is beyond our direct conscious control. Many people think that mm, they're in complete control of their actions. In other words, they believe that only consciousness is relevant. But as we saw in an earlier episode, consciousness is just a tip of the iceberg. The activity that takes place beneath the surface, the unconscious, is so predominant in terms of our behavior, and we're often not even aware of how it's influencing us and the people around us. So, how did the SOS develop? Well, the SOS development kind of has walked in lockstep with the history of this country. You know, worked ideals regarding this false notion of race was have been floated uh, into the larger society throughout time, and those ideals have never been effectively exterminated. In fact, they've mutated and changed and adjusted to the changes in the social landscape. Presently, these menacing ideals continue to stealthily, that is, without our detection, to nurture our minds and actions. There has been legislation passed, um, some well intended, like legislation to fight discrimination or legislation that's perceived as reverse discrimination. Marches and other types of social responses have occurred. But those social responses are in response to the belief that the race thing is real. And so while people are busy passing laws or protesting against what they believe to be a physical enemy, the real enemy, which is the underlying social conditioning being produced by the SOS, gets goes unnoticed. And as it continues to go unnoticed, it continues to wreak havoc on our larger society. So the SOS has been with us since the beginning of this country. And so consider this to kind of reinforce my previous point. The United States became an independent nation in 1776, and shortly thereafter, in 1790, the Census Bureau, um, well, eventually became the Census Bureau, began to collect and publish data on the human population in the United States. And as a result of these publications, which were distributed socially and continue to be disseminated socially, um, the information depicted humans in artificial and erroneous subgroups. You know, the white label, the black label, all those things, and those labels are of course false. But even though they're false, because they were repetitively being transmitted throughout the larger society, we became conditioned into believing that they were true. Again, it's really kind of sad that we can look at a person and tell that they're not physically black or physically white or physically red, but yet we accept that. And it's because we have been conditioned to do so, and we haven't been given an alternative. We haven't collectively agreed on an alternative. And I would argue that the only effective alternative that treats us equal is to perceive each other as human. That's all we are. And so, as a result of this dissemination of information throughout the larger society, a network was created, a framework for which the race nonsense was given a false sense of validity. And so that system is still in place today. It constantly is morphing and changing to reflect the uh, changing social landscape and demographics. But it's a system that says we're different when in fact We're all just human. Now, it begs an interesting question. Who were some of the um, architects, the developers of these ideals that gave rise to the SOS? And I want to just mention a few examples because to develop a completely exhausted list would probably be an impossibility. But we can give some examples just to make the point. And we'll start with on the historical side, just some individuals who made contributions that contributed to the current human hierarchy and also the false claims and notions to try and give justification to that hierarchy. And this list is very simple. I mean, very very brief. I could compile hundreds of names from history, but that's really not the point because as we are seeing in each of these cases, these individuals, their lives began and their lives have ended. But what's interesting is even though their lives have ended, their handiwork, their their socially destructive contributions continue to have traction. So again, I'm not blaming. This is not about blaming anyone because this is a channel about promoting human unity. It's simply saying let's take an honest assessment of where we are and how can we change the course of direction for this country that is not dehumanizing. Change it in a way that respects the uniqueness of each individual. And so the historical architects. I mean, we could talk about Carolus Linnaeus. We could talk about Johann Friedrich Blumenbach. We could talk about uh, Francis Galton. There are so many, and like in most cases, their lives have come to an end, but their handiwork continues to hover over our society. On the modern side, we can also identify persons who are, have contributed to the development of the human hierarchy, and it's you and I, myself included. Until I became aware of the the deception in terms of depiction of the human family, I honestly was conditioned. And so a lot of the labeling that is so prevalent through our society, I would apply it without thinking about it because it was normalized. And so you and I, through our the way we address other human beings, applying labels, the assumptions we have about other human beings, the expectations we have of others, we are helping to maintain the the handiwork of these historical architects. And so what we have to do is we have to become aware of our actions and then change it. And we change it by how we perceive each other, how we refer to each other, the expectations we have of each other, the information and how it's presented socially. All of those things will help us to break free of the efforts that were undertaken historically. So again, this channel is not about passing blame. It's about saying how can we blaze a new trail that allows us to embrace our common humanity and to move forward in a more harmonious way. So, if you have been challenged by the comments in this episode, I hope that you would give me a thumbs up. If you feel compelled to comment, feel free to do so. But most importantly, I would hope that you would share the ideals that are developing on this channel with others so that we can come up with a way to change the course of our country which will be advantageous both for us in terms of how we perceive and relate to each other, but also tidy things up for future generations. So until next time, we are humanity. A united tomorrow must start today. Take care.